Welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello. We are your messy, imperfect homeschool mom friends. If you are beyond tired of shiny homeschool influencers with their pristine millennial gray houses and their salon perfect blowouts, join the club, right? I kind of look like I've got a blowout going on today, but this is like 4-day-old took it out of a messy bun and floofed it. So I'm not rocking that thing. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. My curls are looking good, which is pretty shocking because I tried a new conditioner. That's the only reason they look different than normal. So we'll see how that goes. But here's the deal, right? We love our kids. We love homeschooling, but we never, ever want you to walk away from an episode thinking, holy crap, I suck. Everyone else seems to totally have their shit together. What is wrong with me?
Yeah, no. The answer is there's nothing wrong with you, right? Most of what we see on social media isn't real, or at a minimum, it isn't the complete picture. Like maybe that day was that shiny and perfect, but the day before it and the day after were a hot mess. So it can be really hard to remember that though, when you're inundated with, reels and TikToks and photos that are just perfection after perfection after perfection. So we keep it real here. We have good days, and then we have days that are complete clusterfucks. That's life. And we are right there in the thick of it with you.
Yes. All right. So today's topic is kind of randomly college scholarships. Okay. So if you're homeschooling peanuts, hang in with us anyway. Your time will be here sooner than you realize, for better or worse. Plus, it's never too early to get your kid interested in the ham radio. Stay tuned. We'll explain why that matters.
The most random of all hooks. But yes, I promise it matters, right? So this is actually our last main episode of season 1, episode 59 of 60. We still have one Word Book Club episode to record this week. But one of the reasons why we timed this episode to launch in November is because the new year is the time to hit the ground running with applications and essays. If I'm being honest, really now is the time, right? Through the holiday season, which no one really wants to add something else to their plate during the holiday season, but now's kind of a great time to start getting prepped because the new year is kind of when you hit the ground and go. Most scholarship deadlines range from the end of February to the end of May. And truly within there's a bit of a bell curve where like March and April are kind of the sweet spot. So we'll be discussing those options today. But first, we always start off with a recap of our weeks. So how's your week been, Amanda?
My week has been a little ugly. We have talked before. I feel like I'm always like, we have talked before about, but I volunteer for my homeowners association. We live in a large condo community, and we had some thefts from personal storage units this weekend and the weekend before. And it's not uncommon, right? Like if you live anywhere in the lead up to the winter holidays, like people, stuff gets stolen, there's more break-ins and things like that. So it's not a huge surprise, but there are some people who are really upset about it, and it caused lots and lots of issues here. I feel like I'm putting out a lot of fires, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. And we have some staff that are a little extra freaked out about it because they're a bit younger and a little inexperienced, a little green about it. So of the over 500 people we have that live here, there are about 5 who are really upset about things and making lots of noise. And the staff are really, really anxious about making them happy. And it's causing a lot of things. It's causing a lot of stuff and things. And I was not my finest, right? I completely lost my cool at like yelling and like in just a way that was like, it was ugly. It was ugly. And I was able to reel myself back eventually. I mean, like it took hours. And I walked my ass downstairs to the management office and I said, I am still not in a place where I can continue this conversation yet. But that was not okay. I'm sorry for losing my temper and like completely losing my chill the way that I did. No matter how frustrated I am with the entire situation or with things that have happened, it was not a responsible thing. It was not fair for me to lose my temper that way. So I still need time. I'm not ready to talk about next steps because we've pulled the the rolling boil back to a simmer, but it won't take much for it to be a boil again. And that's just kind of been like my whole week, like just constantly on edge at the simmer level, like trying to finally put out this fire. So yeah. And my folks are flying in this weekend, which we're excited to see them. We're going to go stay at a hotel on the ocean, like right on the beach with them, and have kind of like an early holidays get together with them, which is fun and exciting, right? And all of those things. But family coming to visit, it always adds extra stuff that you need to think about and do and plan. And my kiddo, called me on it this week about the fact that I wasn't focusing and providing him the education that he expected me to provide. So I'm dropping the balls, right? This is an excellent example of the fact that we are not perfect. I've dropped the balls this week. I have not been my best version of myself. And every time I start to lose my temper, my kiddo is like, don't forget, we still love you. And I'm like, that is very sweet, but it's not your job to make this better. This is, and like, but also that's very sweet.
Aw, he's such a sweet little soul.
Yeah. He is. He's a good egg. So how about you? I think maybe a little bit emotionally draining for a few reasons, but like maybe not quite so volatile. I don't think you're yelling at quite as many people as I yelled at this week.
No, I haven't lost my shit. So, but the week is young. It's only Thursday. So you never know.
There's time.
So yeah, I mean, we had issues. We're recording this on a Thursday, which is typically the day that our book club episode launches. And this is episode 59, and today's should have been 58, and it's the first and only time we've ever been late with an episode. And I tried the file, Amanda tried the file, I even had my husband try the file. Like, we re-downloaded the file. Like, we just cannot get this thing to upload. So that was a bunch of yesterday, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I really had to put it into perspective. One of our books that we're planning to read next year is Differently Wired. And one of my favorite lines from that book is when the mom who wrote it would get stressed about like work stuff and whatever, she would remind herself that there's no heart in the cooler. Like, she's like, I don't transport live organs for a living. So like, this is all going to be okay. So I was like, you know what? Today with a fresh perspective and tomorrow morning with a fresh perspective, I'll figure something out. We'll somehow get the episode up. I was thinking I might even just do audio and ditch the video, and I don't know. We'll figure something out. We'll get it out there. But so that was yesterday. We are still in Poland, which we have been for our last couple of episodes. We are in Krakow, Poland right now, which is beautiful. And so we've been bopping around, and we joined a homeschool hub this week, which is really fun. There's about 35 families maybe in the hub. And there's a ton of teenagers. And so it's been a great week. And there's one in London next month. And my kids are actually like, do you think you could find an affordable place to stay in London that we could join the next one? And so I think that might happen. Affordable and London don't really go together.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really sure you're going to make that part happen, but the hub might happen.
Yeah. I found a place. It's relatively affordable. It's going to be very tight, I think, and all of that. But yeah. So yeah, we've been doing that. But it's been great. But it's tiring in a fun way. But during the day, it's been activities. And then at night, there's all these board game clubs around Krakow. And so we just got home from board game club right before we were going to record. Last night was karaoke night. I mean, the teens are out every night doing their thing. And so last night I didn't go because I had some work to do, but I'm still then looking at my phone and making sure that I'm waiting for the text, got there okay, heading home, so all that. But the emotionally draining part that Amanda referenced is the kids and I got up this morning before the crack of dawn. We left our place in the dark this morning because we had booked a tour to go to Auschwitz. And I guess the way it works from my understanding is we booked the tour 2 months ago because they sell out. And it seems like the museum works with the tour guide operators for timed entry. And so we got a text about 2 days ago just confirming our entry time and apologizing that our entry time was at the ass crack of dawn. And so we had to be at the bus stop, which was about 5 minutes from our apartment, at 5:55 this morning, which is not a time that we normally function. So between getting up at 5 a.m. to get ourselves ready to go, and then, so that was not, that made us tired. And then just the emotion of the day, we watched a film on the way there on the coach. And I live and breathe World War II. That's totally my historical period that I function in. My husband's family is from Poland. We're Jewish, the whole thing. So I'm very familiar. It's not like I didn't know what I was walking into, right? But we watched a film on the ride there, and there was some footage in that film. It was all footage that had been shot by a Soviet cinematographer who entered at liberation. And there was some footage, I won't go into it, particularly around a baby that myself and then two of my kids, one of my kids was asleep. All of us separately later went, "Oh, that baby!" Like, that was the point that got all of us. So we got up at 5:55. We've walked almost 16,000 steps today, and then the emotion of the day. It's been like, whew. But we came back from that. We had a 3-hour nap. Got some dinner. We went to board game night. So, so it's been a really big day, but good overall. Our tour guide was fantastic, like ridiculously fantastic. So overall it was a really meaningful and important day for us. I felt like something we needed to do. So, and tomorrow as a group with the hub, we're supposed to go to Schindler's Factory, which is right on the outskirts of Krakow. So it'll be meaningful to see that as well. So it'll be good.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that's one of those things that should be on the list that always go around of like things that you should definitely see or do, right? I personally feel that you can't really grasp the feel like and know what it is in a concentration camp unless you have actually gone and toured one and seen the things that they have there. I mean, obviously there are museums in the United States and in different places, but actually being there in that space, there's just a different it hits different, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that everyone who travels and makes a point of seeing different things around the world should make a point of including that in their travels.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even take many pictures today. And I was talking to my mom and a couple of other people afterwards. And I said, like, we all know what it looks like. We've all seen it in movies. You can Google image what Auschwitz looks like. There's no photo that I was going to take that was going to capture the difference between seeing it online and standing there. So I was like, I'm just going to stand here and exist here and listen to the tour guide and kind of do that thing. So I took, I think, 3 photos the whole day in certain spots and otherwise just kind of soaked it in because the photos, you can't even grasp it from pictures. It's just, it's out of this world as far as trying to wrap your mind around what actually happened there and stuff. So even going in, knowing a ton about that period in history, it was still like, oof. So definitely meaningful. I would definitely recommend it when kids are older. It was definitely a worthwhile 5 a.m. wake up call for us. So yeah. Definitely. There were so many people in our
I'm
group
not positive
that
I'd go at 5 a.m.
I know. We didn't have a choice. I literally booked it like 2 months ago. And then they just sent this thing saying like, we're so sorry, but this is the time slot we were given. And I was like, okay. And there were a bunch of people in the hub that dropped because they were like, there was no way. And there was an alternate activity today anyway for younger kids and stuff like that. So a bunch of people who were planning to go to the concentration camp switched to the other activity. And I was like, no, we're totally going. It's like a once in a lifetime thing. It's an important part of my kids' family history. We need to show up and do this thing. But yeah, it was a lot. So yeah. So, and now here we are talking college scholarships, which, let's do it,
So yeah, exactly. All right. So back to college scholarships, right? It is a little ironic that our current book club selection talks about alternatives to college and not going to college and not spending a ton of money at university. And now here we are talking about how to pay for college. But that's life. There are times that you think about things and you noodle things. And then there are times that you're like, yeah, but I actually need extra money. And I'm not sure anyone listening to this is like, no, don't give me extra money. So we're going to talk college scholarships. Tip number 1 that we think everyone should know and too many people don't realize. Please, 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 for the love of all things, create a separate email account. Okay. They are going to sell your email address to anyone and everyone you can possibly imagine. They are going to make bank off of the email addresses they get through this process. And you don't want that in your inbox, right? So just set up a separate account. Depending on who you go with and how you do it, you might set it up so that it still comes into your regular account, into its own folder, so you can go look at it when you need to. You might keep it completely separate and just put something on your calendar to remember to go look at it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something, however you want to do that, but make sure you have a separate account so that your regular, this is important email account, because we all have that. We have our junk email, we have our important email, we have our, you do not want that completely flooded and bombarded with ridiculousness about, all the things. You just don't.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter had that and I mean, she's applying for or looking at art schools, fashion schools, etc., right? And she'll get something from like tech schools and all this kind of, I mean, they sell it to everybody and they don't care. So
yeah,
separate it, save your sanity, separate it, create an email address and be done. Right? Yeah, absolutely. All right. Tip number 2, there is a book on Amazon. We will link it in our podcast description called The Ultimate Scholarship Book. And then it'll have the year. So at this point, you would be looking at the Ultimate Scholarship Book 2025, but it comes out every year. I've looked at years, 2024 and 2023, for example, and they're pretty darn similar. So if you get a hand-me-down copy or something, you should be okay. I wouldn't necessarily worry about like, it has to be the newest one. If your neighbor, cousin, sister has 2024, take it. But the subtitle of that book is Billions of Dollars in Scholarships, Grants, and Prizes. So true. And the book is like a phone book. I mean, I'm 43. You remember phone books, right? Like not the little one, but the big phone book, right?
Yeah.
It is a phone book of information. So I would suggest getting that. And then we're also going to link these little page sticky tab things. Amanda loves hers for book club. And so grab those and you can write on them, you can color code your setup, whatever. But the book is literally, let me see, I have it open on Amazon. Let me see if it tells me how many pages it is. Let me expand this window. It is it 688 pages long. So, and the font is not big. Okay. So there's a lot of detail in this book that you're going to want to be stickying things. Okay, so within there are indexes at the back, and there will be things by state. Okay, so if you live in California, you can pull up California stuff. If you have a kid who wants to go into engineering, there'll be an index for that. If you or your partner are part of the military, there are entire sections divided out by military branch. So there is literally a scholarship for everyone in this book. I mean, there's so many things in there and it follows a format, right? So in the beginning, when you look at it, or at least I was, when I read it, I was like, this is going to, how does anyone get through this book, right? This is going to take me 10 million years. But your eyes start to get trained on looking at key sections, key categories, because it's like a little template, right? It's like, amount, date, website. And so your eyes start to be able to scan each listing really, really quickly after a while. So you can kind of move through it, but there's so much stuff in there. Like I saw one in there a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it's still there, but it was literally a scholarship for the grandchildren of Polish submariners. And I thought, how stiff could the competition be possibly for this scholarship, right? Like really. And to Amanda's reference earlier, the number of ham radio operator scholarships that there are is no small thing. Like I literally was reading the book and texted my oldest son and was like, what do you know about ham radios? Because there are so many of them in there. So that's where it's like, if you have a younger kid, you might, and you never know. I mean, right? Is there a ham radio club nearby? Go for it, because it's a skill that I guess they're trying to keep alive. And so they're funding scholarships for it and all that kind of stuff. So there's really quirky stuff in there for just about everyone that you could possibly find. So the book is a really awesome resource.
Yeah, no, that's it too. If you have younger kids and you're like, I really want them to get involved in something, but we're not about scouts. We're not about, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. We're not about 4-H or, whatever the thing may be. It does not hurt to look at this and be like, oh, these random things have scholarships because they want, and maybe you end up encouraging your kid to learn ham radio with a local group, or maybe they are doing, the small remote controlled airplanes and things like that. Or maybe they're doing, I know there's some for like train aficionados, like organizations that get together and do the like little model railroad train things. Like they want to encourage young kids to get involved. And in part of that is they give scholarships to help with their furthering education. So like, by all means, why not use it as a jumping off point for a new hobby, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So our next tip number 3, more places to find scholarships. So this is just a general list. Keep in mind that a lot of schools, universities, colleges and universities have scholarship lists on their website. So if you're looking at a few, it's worth checking to see if they actually have a list of ones that are specifically for their university. But some of them have even beyond that. One example is the Academy of Art University. They have a list full of links that are geared towards their school, their university. And then there's another one that further down on the page is like nationwide scholarship opportunities. And then it links to the Chamber of Commerce, which has tons of additional opportunities and things there. And in that link, it will also say another great place to look at is the US Department of Labor. They have an entire huge website for finding scholarships. Definitely worth looking into, right? Those generally are going to be a little harder to get. Anything that's being advertised nationwide is, so look more locally as well. You might check your own company. If you're a parent listening to this, which I'm assuming for the most part, it's parents listening to us, your company or your spouse's workplace may very well have a scholarship program that's only eligible, open to employees. Check it out. You might check with your parents, the grandparents or things like that, because a lot of times it's open that way. I know when I was in school, I definitely got a scholarship from my dad's job. Check with your local high school guidance counselor. It will not be hard to find their email address. Shoot them an email and say, hey, I'm just wondering if you pulled together a list of scholarship opportunities. For the most part, they already put in that work and they're not going to mind sending you a copy of it. Their goal is to help kids pay for college. Your neighborhood one might be a bit of a gatekeeper on it, but for the most part, in my experience, they're like, yeah, sure, good luck. Maybe they'll remove a couple of the ones that are specifically for their school or that they have an inside with, but it's a great resource, right? There are lots of options, and it's worth remembering that the things that are in your own community are probably going to be a little bit easier to get, right? To score.
Yeah, it's less competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great option. And it kind of dovetails in with tip number 4 as well, which was, to your point, the big national ones are going to be a little bit harder to get. Some of the ones where you have a closer tie or a closer connection might be a little bit of a smaller competition pool. So tip number 4 is to make a calendar of deadlines and formulate a game plan. So there are literally there's thousands. There's not even hundreds. There's thousands of them out there, right? You cannot apply for even 100 of them and do it well, right? There's just absolutely no way. So your best bet is to look at the deadlines, right? Get somewhere you're staggering your deadlines so that you can work through them. Look at the dollar amounts and be strategic about that as well. And I'm not saying only go for big ones. Those small ones add up. And sometimes the requirements for those small ones are smaller. I remember when my best friend growing up was in college and she wrote something for like Betty Crocker or something. It was like a really small, like $500 or something. She got it, and it helped her. She was going to like a local community college, and it helped her pay for some books. So it was awesome. So make a game plan, right? Figure out which ones you're going after, figure out which ones you have the best shot at, figure out the timeline, make sure you've got some in February, some in March, some in April. And that way you can kind of stagger your efforts going towards them, and then figure out how to get all that done, right? We've talked about goal setting before. We've talked about working backwards into a goal and figuring out like baby steps into a goal. So baby step your way there, right? I wouldn't put on the calendar like this is due on March 1st and then not really think about it again until February 27th. You step your way out and be like, okay, these are these are due this time. So my goal is to have my essay done by this time. And then some of my other steps done by X, Y, and Z time as well. And part of that is because, and we'll talk about these in some of the other steps, part of that is because some of your steps are going to involve other people. And so what is that saying? Like, your lack of preparedness does not equate to my emergency or something. So if you've waited till February 27th and now you need support from co-op teachers, sports coaches, whatever, parents, and you're like, this is due in an hour and a half, right? Like, that's going to be a little tough. So be strategic, make your calendar, set some mini goals and stick to them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that thing. If you listen to us on a regular basis, this is not going to be new to you. But if you somewhere saw that we were doing a podcast on this and you popped in to listen and you're not really familiar with us, this is one of those examples where we absolutely advocate. Involve your child, involve your teen. They should be managing this. This is a great opportunity to practice those executive functioning skills, but this is also an important thing. And as the parent, this is one of those places where you should be supporting them and helping them, and also helping teach these executive functioning skills, right? We would like to believe that every teenager will hear this and you say, make sure you plan that out and put a deadline, plan it out before the deadline. And they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know how to. But I know for a fact that if I told my husband to do that, his deadline and my deadline and the way that we got to that would look not at all the same. Right. And, he's 49 years old. So don't expect your 16 or 17-year-old to be like, oh, yes, of course, that makes perfect sense. I'll make a 2-month runway to the deadline and everything will be, this is the kind of thing that you sit down with them, you map out, you work together, you practice these skills, right? So that you're doing it as a team effort in the hopes that when you actually launch them, they can do it on their own the next time around, right?
What I took from that is that every time you say something about your husband, I just become more and more convinced that we're married to the same person, right? Because
that'd be a little awkward, but yeah.
That's us. And I'm like, stop leaving shit to the last minute. And then when things fall apart at the last minute, I'm like, this is why I don't like leaving things till the last minute. I mean, it's been 20 years of this. Neither one of us is budging, So yes, we're married to the same person. I think in theory, they're like clones of each other, separated at birth. Yeah. I don't know.
Two totally different continents, separated at birth. There you go. Okay. So we have more tips for you. But before we get to that, we just want to make sure that everyone knows we have finally officially launched our website. It looks really good. All the pictures are working. All of the links are working. We have a lot more blog posts up now. So all of the things that we talk about, we have actual blog posts with way more links than we can put in our show notes to help you know, oh, this was the specific thing we were talking about, or this is what we were referring to. So just go check it out. I know this is going to blow your mind, but it's at homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com. I know we got real creative with the title there, but yeah, go poke around, check it out. We'd love feedback if you find something that's not working or something was confusing, or if you see something you really like. We've put a fair amount of work into it. And so, yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, our previous book club selections are over there. So if you're just finding us and you're listening to previous book club episodes and there's a book or two that you really find interesting, they're there. So help yourself. Go check it out. Awesome stuff. Okay,
I do just want to make a little plug. If you have any kind of am I the asshole or a student spotlight where you just really want to brag on your kiddo, you can submit those through the website. We have a form on there now, so it's super easy. You can just pop on and it's pretty easy to find on there. But if you have any issues, let us know. We're happy to help.
Yeah, today we're student spotlighting my kid because nobody submitted anything. And I'm like, I will. She did something really rock starish this week. So I'm pretty pumped about that. Having nothing to do with traditional education, but I'm pumped about it. And so, but yeah, we would totally love to spotlight someone else's kids. We talk about our own kids plenty on the podcast. So submit stuff, right? Yeah.
And the thing is, you can brag here. We're going to support your kiddo. It doesn't matter what they've done, big or small. If you are happy or proud, let us share in it. Like that is a huge part of what this is about too. This podcast is not about like they have to make the elite travel soccer team to be proud of them, or they have to, like it's not about that. I was just in a gifted thing and someone had asked the question like, oh, my kiddo, finally got approval to grade skip, and my husband wants to say something about it on social media, but I feel awkward, what do you think? And I was shocked at the number of people who responded with like, oh, absolutely not, you don't share that on social media, don't tell people, like you're just bragging about how smart they are, like there's no reason to. And I was like, no, like, don't be an asshole about the way you share it. Like, don't make one of our episodes of Am I the Asshole? But your kiddo, they sat through a battery of tests. They consistently performed above grade level. They consistently showed up and they did the work and they produced good work. Like, especially in public schools, if your kid's not producing work that is of high quality, they are not going to consider grade skipping. Like, you should be able to tell people and have other people be like, hey, that's awesome. Congratulations. Like, well done. Way to go. We're here for that.
Yeah, we love that stuff. We'll celebrate right along with you. We do not judge being proud of our kids. It's an important thing. So love it. Yeah, so submit those. We would love to share them. And if you're all about privacy, we'll use initials. So, we'll totally celebrate. I mean, we talk about Amanda's kid, Winston, on the podcast all the time. His name's totally not Winston. So, we're all about whatever you're most comfortable with. That's what we're comfortable with. So go ahead and share. Okay, so tip number 5, back to our scholarship tips. Tip number 5, do a bit of research on the company or the donor so that you can personalize your essay or your application notes a little bit to what they stand for, like something that they're known for, something about their company culture, something that they're particularly proud of that they kind of call out, anything like that, maybe a meaningful connection that you have to that organization or that product or whatever the case might be, right? But do a little bit of research. I mean, it's kind of like going for a job interview, right? Would you show up for a job interview at a company and they say, do you have any questions or whatever? You need to have a question ready, right? You need to have shown that you did your research in advance, that you're showing up prepared, that you've done your due diligence. And so it's kind of the same thing, right? That you want to personalize it a bit so that it doesn't look like it's the same essay that you've sent to 150 scholarships this season and you're just hoping to get something. Even if it is a variation of the same essay, I mean, you can certainly reuse bits and pieces, but you want to craft and mold each one a little bit to personalize it, to give it a bigger impact and give it a little bit more oomph, a little bit more weight when you submit it. So definitely do a bit of research and just kind of learn something, even if it's something obscure, or maybe it's like a quote from their founder or, something from their mission statement or whatever. Use it, right? Show that you've done your homework.
Yeah, for sure. So tip number 6, if you need letters of recommendation, spoiler alert, you will need letters of recommendation. Okay, this is not an if maybe at some point. Like, you will definitely need letters of recommendation. So check into what it is you're going to need. A lot of times your letters will fall into kind of general categories. They want to see specific skills or attributes that you have exhibited, that you possess, that sort of thing. Keep in mind that you can use the same letter of recommendation for multiple applications, but ask for them early, okay? Like, do your research, ask for letters of recommendation ahead of time, and be incredibly specific. I know some people feel like, oh, well, I don't want to tell them exactly what to write because then it's not an honest letter of recommendation. But for the most part, if you have someone that you really like and you think they're going to write you an awesome letter of recommendation, you're not the only person who thinks they're going to write you an awesome letter of recommendation. And if they have to write a bunch of letters of recommendation, you don't want just a blank cookie cutter one. And for the most part, they want to help you as well, right? Yeah. They're not going to waste their time writing a letter that doesn't get you what you need. But we don't need to have play 20 questions and the back and forth and, well, what is this for? And what do you want me, and is there anything, like, straight up front, ask specifically for the letter of recommendation, tell them the timeline that you're working with. And I would add in, kind of an extra week or two to make sure you give them a buffer in case something goes wrong and you have to remind them. And then be incredibly specific. I would love it if you could talk about my ability to do this or my work doing this. If there's anything else you would like to highlight beyond that, that would be great too.
Mm-hmm.
Easy. It's not that hard. It's just about being clear, knowing what you need and asking for it, right? Being direct.
Yeah. And I think too, I know for my own kiddo, when she's needed a letter of recommendation, sometimes she has known what somebody's objection to her for a particular project might be. And so she's asked in her letters of recommendations for people to overcome that objection proactively, right? So she applied for an internship over the summer. This past summer, I talked about it during episodes that we recorded at that time. And it was for college students. Now she's 15, but she's a college student, right? And so she met the criteria to apply, but she was a little bit worried that her age might be something that they would just pause at, right? And say, like, is she responsible enough to be in a state far from home by herself or show up on time? Is her work ethic going to be there and all that kind of stuff? And so when she asked for her letter of recommendation from the dean of the college that she goes to, she said, could you specifically say something like, I forget how she worded it and how they communicated with one another, but it boiled down to the letter said something like, as one of our youngest students, like her work ethic is, incredible. And so basically it was like, okay, let's just meet the objection or the potential objection or perceived objection head on and overcome it. If you think that you know what it might be. And it worked. So,
right. I mean, it's that thing. If you're applying for a job and you have a 5-year employment gap or a 10-year employment gap on your resume, in your cover letter, you can pretend like they're not going to notice that you have a huge employment gap and hope that they just don't ask. Or you can address it head on in a way that's like, hey, this is what was happening. And, I will almost always prefer, like, just tell me, right? Like, just address it instead of making it like a game of guess who. Like, it does not need to be.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Set yourself up for success. So speaking of setting yourself up for success, tip number 7, proofread the shit out of your application and everything.
Please
your essay, your application. Oh my gosh, please. Right. Please. I mean, that's just such a terrible way to stand out is by, having loose and lose mixed up or something like that, right? Which are like two that drive me insane, or your theirs or your its or whatever, right? All of that stuff, proofread. And this is where setting your timelines and having buffers in there, this is one of those ones where you're going to want help, right? So the kiddo is hopefully writing the essay mostly independently, right? I mean, maybe there's a brainstorming session, or maybe they have a writing coach or a mentor or something that they're using for a little bit of support. But whoever's good at proofreading, like in my house, it's my mom. My mom proofreads everything. I mean, she proofreads our blog posts for our website, right? Like my mom proofreads everything. If you have a neighbor, your grandfather, like whoever, a friend of the family, somebody from your co-op, especially like parents. I know I see posts often from parents who are considering homeschooling, who feel that they themselves maybe didn't have a stellar education, or they speak English as a second language, and they feel like that's something that's going to hold them back from homeschooling. Spoiler alert, it will not. You will do amazing at homeschooling. But, maybe proofreading isn't your strong suit, and that's okay. But I mean, you could ask a librarian, for crying out loud. Like, librarians will say yes to just about anything you ever ask them for. So like, get other people into the fold. And also you can ask opinions for them. You can say, like, this is the scholarship. Do you feel like I met the tone of what this thing is asking? Because when you're very close to your work, it's hard to be objective about it, and it's hard to perceive it the way other people might with a blank slate. And so asking people who are not as close to it for their opinion of, like, did I hit the nail on the head? And they might be like, no, I totally would never have put this with that thing. Okay, you want to know that now before you submit it, right? Take another stab at it.
No, that's so true. And the other thing too is with proofreading, if you're a teenager who's listening to this and you're like, oh, I proofread it myself, I don't need anyone else to read it.
Oh, heck no.
It doesn't matter how great of a writer you are, right? Like, I used to edit my school newspaper. I do quite a bit of writing for all sorts of different things. But the fact of the matter is, what I think I wrote and what I actually wrote are not always the same thing, especially when you're typing, right? You're typing, you're going really fast, you accidentally type the wrong kind of thing, you miss a word, you leave something out, or you type the wrong version of it. Your spell check doesn't pick that up. Your Grammarly might miss it. And when you go and read it back, you know exactly what that sentence was supposed to say. So that's what you read, right? It's a proven fact. It's a thing, right? So take the time and have, have someone else proofread it for you. It can make a huge difference.
100%.
All right. So we've got lots of tips, but we also want to be realistic. Okay. So there is a reality to applying for scholarships. And some of them you're just not going to qualify for, especially as a homeschool student. So it is important to pay attention to what they say the requirements are. And again, this goes back to that point of being strategic. Don't waste your time, right?
Yeah.
So some require a high school diploma. Depending on how you're doing it, what you're doing, where you're at in your schooling, right? That may or may not apply to you. We have talked before, you can absolutely go back and listen. If you're homeschooling, you can absolutely graduate with a high school diploma. There's no reason that you don't have to. But if for some reason you have decided to finish your high school career without a high school diploma, don't waste your time applying for something that requires that piece of paper, right? Also, unfortunately, many, depending on which ones you're looking at, require that the applicant be 18 years old. Some of us, it's not uncommon. It's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not uncommon for homeschool kids to be going into college or university before they're 18. Some things you can do like Meagan's daughter did, and you address the objection. And, if you think you have a compelling reason, by all means, go for it. But if it seems like it's a pretty hard and fast rule, must be 18, don't waste your time. There are other places where you can put your time. People draw arbitrary lines in the sand all the time. And that is the exact same with school scholarships. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on the website and there's a whole chunk of legalese at the bottom and the must be 18 is in that chunk of legalese, there is no freaking way you're getting around that, right? That has been approved by teams of lawyers at that organization, and they're not going to be like, oh, but we really love this candidate. You're not getting it, right? I mean, it's just not happening. So, and I know because my kid has tried it on numerous occasions, right? So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So unfortunately, if you are an early to college person, you will be more limited. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. So we've been there and done it. So I could definitely speak to it, but there's still plenty of others. Kiddo applied to plenty of them. So it's all good. So the season is coming up. So get yourself ready, get organized. I know for me, the first time I started to look into it was like in April. And that's one of the reasons why when we were planning our season, I was like, we need to talk about this, because if you've not done it before, you don't realize that there's like an actual season for this stuff where it all occurs. And my assumption is that it has to do with companies getting their new fiscal budgets and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay. And then also just the timing of like knowing what funds you have as a student by the end of the school year, so that in the fall, you know what you've got to work with, right? So there's definitely a time for this to happen. So happy applying. Tell us how it goes. Yeah. Can't wait to hear. But don't leave us just yet. We have our student spotlight of the week.
Student spotlight. We don't judge bragging here. We celebrate with you.
Yes, as Amanda said, we celebrate.
Right, so give it to me.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got a good one.
Okay. I do have a good one. Okay. So my kids, I've talked about it before. My kids have had like a bit of a rough stretch when it comes to socializing, because we moved in June of 2020, which was like the crappiest time you could ever try to relocate your kids, because there was nothing going on. There was nothing running. Even if there was, we wouldn't have felt comfortable with it. So that was that. And then right as the pandemic was like starting to wind down, as far as like the ultimate severity for many people, most people were vaccinated and more people started feeling comfortable doing group events and things like that. We got moved again by my husband's job. And so it was like, great, we were just about to start making some friends. So then we moved again and we ended up back in the Bible Belt, and it was like, trying to make friends again. So it's been tough, right? They're at that teen stage. And I know a lot of kids have had social struggles from the pandemic in general, right? Like at various points of development, it was just really shit timing for so many kids who were trying to find their way. So anyway, we joined this hub this week and we've never met any of these people. There's a whole bunch of people. And so last night I had to work, I had to teach, and then Amanda and I had our Q&A for Patreon, which if you're not a member of our Patreon, come. We're happy to answer your questions. If you want to find the perfect ELA curriculum or something, come talk to Amanda. If you want to know about unschooling, come talk to me. So we'll get you sorted out. But anyway, so last night we had that. And so I couldn't go out, right? So this hub has all these different text chats. So there's one that goes, that's like the parents, and every day there's a poll, like who's doing this, who's doing that, so that we can make reservations and stuff. But then there's a teen chat. So last night the teens made plans to go to karaoke. And one of my kiddos was like, I'm in. The other two were like, we have to be up at 5 a.m. I'm not going to karaoke, right? Which was probably the smart and logical thing to do, but
But your teen years are a perfect time to make the not smart and logical choice.
Exactly. So she went into the teen chat. There's a couple of people we're in Old Town in Krakow, like right near the square. And there's a couple of people in buildings like right around us and all these different apartment buildings that are also part of the hub. And so she messaged somebody who's in the apartment building across and was like, hey, if I come downstairs, like text me when you're going downstairs, I'll text you. And it's an older boy who's 16, 17, kind of like this age of my oldest son. And so I would let her walk around the city with my oldest kiddo. Like there's something, right or wrong, right, sexist as it might be, there's something about walking through the city with a 6-foot tall boy that I feel like she's safer, right? It's just
reality is reality when it comes to safety, and safety for women, for sure.
Exactly. And so she met up with him. I said, just text me when you get there and whatever. And so she went, and they were going to karaoke, and I thought for sure, like, she'll go, she'll have fun, whatever. She karaoke'd. Like, this is so outside her comfort zone. And I was so excited because I was like, it's like a new friend group, and she just kind of threw herself in and she karaoke'd. And I was like, yes, like multiple times. Cause I was like, what song did you sing? And she's like, oh, I went multiple times. And I was like, right. And part of the struggle that I've had, not struggle, but part of just the challenge of having a kiddo like her, we've talked about some of the stuff that she does before in previous episodes, right? She's 15. She's finishing her 2-year degree next month. And she has a part-time job working for like a design firm in Manhattan. And she writes for magazines and all that kind of stuff. It's hard sometimes to balance like being in the grown-up world and being in the kid world, right? And finding that balance of like knowing how to let loose and have fun. And so I was like, she did the thing. Like she went with people she didn't know. I mean, kind of knew, but like, and let loose and had fun and the whole thing. So having nothing to do with technically homeschooling. I mean, we're at a homeschool hub, so like we'll call that related to homeschooling. But anyway, I was just like super pumped. Like she had fun and she went and she did it and she came back and she was a happy as a clam. And so I was like, okay, this is working. So today, that's what like when I said I go, there's another hub in like 3-4 weeks in London. I was like, if you guys, and she was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, yes, right. So I'm like, of course, there's kids at the hub from all over the world, like South Africa, Denmark, like all kinds of stuff. So it's not going to be the same as having like neighborhood friends, but the world is small. There's WhatsApp and there's, all this other stuff. And a lot of these kids go from hub to hub or do multiple in a year, and they go early and they stay longer and all that kind of stuff. So there is the potential to make friends there. And so I was like, okay, I think we're on to something. So I was really pumped about that.
Well, sure. And, even just beyond that, it's okay to have friends for a week. I have wonderful memories of family vacations where, my brothers were quite a bit younger than me. So as a tween and a teen going on family vacation with my elementary age brothers, my favorite part was, going to the pool or the beach and making friends with other kids my age and palling around with them and hanging out. Even if we didn't stay in touch afterwards, right? It's a lot of fun to make new friends and to carry those memories. And that's part of the vacation fun, right? And childhood and all of that. So that's great. I'm glad it's working out.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so they go to board game club every night and, they sit and they pair off in different groups. And we've brought with us, rummy and cards and Mexican Train and Monopoly and all that stuff. And so it's been a really positive experience. It's been exhausting. but amazing. So I'm game. And we're spending the next couple of weeks, just the four of us, me and the kids. My husband is out of the country working. And so, we'll have like a little downtime and we'll kind of regroup ourselves, where you don't feel like you're missing out and like time is of the essence and whatever. So it'll be a nice shift to go from this to that and then jump back in and hopefully do another hub. So we'll see. I'll work on that when we're done podcasting tonight and see if I take the plunge and book it.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Thank
All right.
you.
So before we say goodbye, we would like to wrap up with our mantra for the week. So today's mantra is success with scholarships starts with a solid game plan. Stay organized, stay focused, and take it one step at a time. Remember, every effort you put in today brings you closer to achieving tomorrow's dreams. Yeah.
True story.
So on that, yeah, exactly. True story. I say that all the time. So with that, we hope you have a great week. We'll see you in a couple days for book club. And until then, happy homeschooling.